A couple of days ago, one of my homegirls came to my house and I noticed that she was sick. And it wasn't nothing serious or anything like that. She was just coughing and she had a stuffy nose. But anyway, she also told me that her throat was sore and she couldn't swallow food or swallow anything to drink. So I tried to offer her some medicine for the sore throat, but she told me she had already took some medicine and it wasn't working. That's when I made her some tea and I told her that sometimes drinking tea can also help with the sore throat. And she tried to drink the tea, but she was still complaining about not being able to swallow it. So that's when I gave her another option to help heal her sore throat. I said, well, whenever I have a sore throat, I give my husband a BJ and the soreness just goes away. Now, the very next day, she came back to my house and she told me that she took my advice. She was like, girl, you were so right. The soreness disappeared immediately. I said, okay, well, I'm really glad to hear that. That's when she looked at me and then she said, and your husband couldn't believe it was your idea. So I remember when I was around 7 years old and I had to wake up in the middle of the night just to go use the bathroom. Well, when I was on the way back to bed, I had passed by my parents' room, but their door was cracked. So me being nosy, I had peeped through the crack and noticed that the covers were bouncing up and down. Now I didn't know what was going on, so I just walked into their room and that's when my dad looked at me like he was embarrassed or something. But anyways, I asked my dad what he was doing and he hesitated for a little bit. And then he told me that he was playing cards. And that's when I said, oh, well, who is your partner? And he told me that my mom was his partner. After that, I just walked out their room and closed their door. And then I started heading back towards my room. But then I walked past my older sister's room and that's when I noticed that her covers were bouncing up and down. So I walked into her room and asked her what she was doing. And she also told me that she was playing cards. So I asked her who was her partner and she told me that her boyfriend was. And that's when I just walked out her room and shut the door. And as soon as I finally made it back to my bedroom, I looked across the hall and noticed that my brother's bedroom door was cracked. So again, I wanted to be nosy and I peeped through the crack. And that's when I saw his covers bouncing up and down. So that's when I walked in and I said, you must be playing cards too. He looked at me like he didn't know what I was talking about. But then he finally answered yes to my question. And that's when I said, oh, that's really cool. Well, who's your partner? He stared at me for a minute. And then he said, you don't need a partner if you have a good hand. So I remember when I was a new mom and I had to take the bus to get to my mother's house. And my newborn baby wakes up from her nap and she starts crying, but that only meant she was ready to be fed. So I look into her diaper bag to see if she had any bottles left, but I forgot. Before we had got on the bus, she had drunk her last bottle. And the only thing left for me to do was to breastfeed her. So I lifted her up out her car seat so I can breastfeed her, but she wouldn't take it. But there was this man sitting right next to us, so I decided to use him to get my baby to eat. So I told my daughter if she didn't eat, I'll have to give it to this nice man sitting right next to us. But 10 minutes passed and my baby still didn't want to latch on. And that's when I said, please eat, honey, because if you don't, I'll have to give it to this nice man here. And for some reason, my baby still didn't want to latch on. And at that point, I was getting stressed out because she wouldn't stop crying. And I knew she was hungry because when I gave her an empty bottle, she was trying to drink from it. And that's when I tried to get her to latch onto my breast again. I said, honey, if you don't eat, this man right here is going to be very lucky. But like 2 minutes later, the man just started yelling. He said, come on, kid, make up your mind because I was supposed to get off 5 stops ago. So yesterday I was driving and I got pulled over by a police officer. And this made me really nervous because every time I get pulled over, I get a ticket. And I didn't even know why I was getting pulled over. But anyways, he walked up to my window and asked me to roll it down. So that's what I did. And just when I was about to ask him what the problem was, he handed me a check for $6,000. He said, congratulations, you just won $6,000 for wearing your seatbelt. I guess it was a safety competition going on and I didn't know nothing about it. And then the police officer asked me what was I going to do with the prize money. I hesitated for a minute and then I said, I guess I'll go to driving school to get my license. And right after I said that, my best friend who was sitting in the passenger seat told the officer to not listen to me because I'm a smart aleck when I'm drunk. And that's when I looked at her and started laughing, but my laughing woke up my cousin who was laying in the back seat. And when my cousin saw the cop, he just started panicking. He said, man, I knew we weren't finna get nowhere in this stolen car. And at that moment, I just looked at the police officer and nervously smiled at him. But not too long after that, there was a knock coming from the trunk. And the voice from the trunk said, hello, are y'all gonna let me go?